It is not a mistake or an accident that you are mixed. This was actually intentional and beautiful and good.
Part 2 of a 2-part series with Chandra Crane. I am Rohadi coming at you from Treaty 7 Lands in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You don't want to miss this part. We're talking about multi-ethnicity. We're talking about her book, Mixed Blessing. You can support this podcast by checking out rohadi.com and going to the top right, clicking about. There are different ways. Sign up for the newsletter. That's the free way. Find me on social media and connect in. Let me know how you're doing, how you feeling about all of these different episodes on Season 5 of the Faith in the Fresh Vibe podcast. You can find Chandra online as well. Best bet is probably her Twitter account, which is Chandra L. Crane. That's on Twitter. And then from there, you'll find her Linktree links. All the different places to connect in. You can also purchase her book, Mixed Blessing, wherever fine books are sold. The context, the preamble, the first part was just before this one. So listen to that one first, then come back into this one, which is slightly shorter, but I chopped them into 2 because we had such a good time talking about, well, ourselves. And then also painting a picture, a future, a better future for multi-ethnic people and all people. Without further ado, let's just jump straight in. Mixed Blessing, embracing the fullness of your multi-ethnic identity. There are pieces in this book where I stopped and went, oh, what? Because you put into words the things that I just did. I guess as a writer too, like maybe I should put them in the words too. I never did because it just, and then all of a sudden the aha moment, these were like in some small way, my awoke moment in a sense of being alert to my own self. Your piece on TV and like I'm a dude who's like, I can't watch dramas. Like I just don't have the mental, maybe spiritual capacity to deal with like deep topics of sad movies, drama series, and I do cartoons, comedies, and then you're a bit on cooking, like these race neutral, like there's not going to be an investment for me. I can just shut my mind off right now. My PVR is full of Beat Bobby Flay because like there's just no investment from me to participate in this little piece of joy. And it's just like I've always said that I got enough crap to deal with in the real world to worry about watching it again on TV. And then when you put that into words, it was like, of course. This is why through the pandemic I've watched all of British Bake Off.
Right?
And it's so good.
So good. And kids can watch it. We love that too, right? It's quote unquote safe for kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, generally less cursing, unless you're watching Gordon Ramsay, and then it's bleep, so it's fine.
I haven't even thought about the other cooking shows. Jamie Oliver, like what therapy to watch Jamie Oliver and his, he had like a 8-part series. What are we talking about now? He had this 8-part series on, or something like that. He went through Italy with his mentor. And the friendship they had, do you know what I'm talking about? Because we get the same TV.
I'm going to look it up now.
Actually, our TV is your TV. What should I say? They travel through Italy and just different stops and just the sheer joy around food and the friendship that they have. I'm like, I want that. Why can't I be Jamie Oliver? Other than the white piece, but the rest of it. Back to your book. This is one of the few, and you labeled off maybe the only other ones that are devoted to multi-ethnic folks. Being mixed means being a stranger and sojourner wherever one goes, in every sense of the phrase. and then you jump into explore pain and privilege and promise.
Mm-hmm.
I think you kind of also discuss being able to fit in everywhere in a sense, but also not fitting anywhere.
One of the things I loved with writing the book, so I stand on the soldiers, I stand on the shoulders of Sandy Fraser and the work she did in Check All That Apply. And I actually got to interview her.
Oh, cool.
I quote her a million times in the book. She was the first person to say, Jesus is multiethnic.
Yeah.
And to me, to the reader, it is not a mistake or an accident that you are mixed. This was actually intentional and beautiful and good. That blew me away.
Someone
One
needs
of the
to
things
hear
I
that.
loved, someone needs to hear
right
that.
now.
And so it was such a privilege right now. Yes, you, listener, you're not a mistake. And so it was such a privilege to join the cohort of people saying that, to be a part of that story, to write the book for the next generation. When I talked to Sandy, she said, I have been praying for you. I've been praying for the person that God would choose to write a book for the next generation. In her book, she covers, and of course, she's coming out of Loving v. Virginia, the landmark case in the States, which legalized mixed marriage, demonized, undemonized. Well, no, it's still demonized, but made legal what was already happening, which is mixed marriage. So she's coming directly out of that generation. So she's, half a generation older than I am, but a very different time frame conversation, much more in terms of being biracial, or the word mixed not really being used, not really being reclaimed yet in the way that I and others are seeking to reclaim it and redeem it and use it for good and not for evil. In her book, she's really exploring a lot of the foundational aspects of what it means to be mixed, what it means to be multi-ethnic, what it means to be biracial, and the reality of that and the redemptive goodness of God. When I was doing the interviews for the book, which I loved, and which is one of my favorite things about doing podcasts and also having the Mixed Blessing podcast that I get to host, is hearing these stories. So much of the book wrote itself, was written by the people I interviewed, because so many of the phrases they used were so good that I made sure I recorded all of those and then took meticulous notes so I could quote them in the book. One of the things that came out of it was this third section of the promise. So the pain and the privilege, but also the promise of being mixed. And there are so many ways in which we are a prophetic word to the church about what pain and promise look like together, what the intersection of those look like, what the both and of pain and privilege look like. And I love seeing the promise. I love seeing the things that mixed folks are doing around the world.
Yeah.
And the ways in which we are pressing into reminding the church we are strangers and sojourners in the land, in this land, in this in-between liminal space before the new heavens and the new earth are inaugurated. Man, that's a word the church needs. And that's one of the things I'm most passionate about right now. A new season, right? I love that you asked, and it was really fun to think back on these seasons of life that I've encountered in my journey of multi-ethnicity. The new season I'm in is I was recently promoted to the coordinator of the mixed ministry department, which I'm planting from scratch, which someone recently was praying for me. And I thought, I need to be kinder to myself. I'm planting an entirely new department. That's a lot of work. I need to be nicer to myself and less impatient with myself. So InterVarsity has, I would say in a lot of ways, been at the forefront of racial reconciliation. And we have added departments over the years: Black Campus Ministries, Asian American Ministries, La Fe, which is Latin Fellowship, and Native IV, Native InterVarsity. we now have a mixed ministry department, and I'm the coordinator of it. And that is a whole new season of me figuring out and being delighted to see what it looks like to encourage and empower and equip mixed folks to preach the gospel. And I love it. I love that my job is to find mixed folks, to be found by mixed folks, to tell our stories together, to learn how to tell our stories. I don't want to say better, as though how people are telling their stories isn't already enough, but how to tell our stories louder and even more passionately and in a way that monoethnic people, both minorities and majority folks, can hear. And making sure that mixed people aren't tokenized. I think you mentioned earlier just that weird space of mixed folks tending to have more diversity in their lives. But also, I'm sure you've looked around a room and realized, oh, I'm the diversity. Oh, it's me. It's me in this sea of pale faces, or even this sea of darker faces.
Yeah.
Look, it's me. I'm the diversity.
I don't do
right?
that anymore. Which also leaves me only by myself a lot, but yeah.
Right. So you're the diversity in whatever room you're in, right?
Always.
Even if it's just you.
Always the minority. Yeah.
Always the minority. Exactly. And so finding ways to encourage and empower and equip mixed folks who find themselves in that space time and time again, to make sure that they are given not just, oh, we want to learn from you without any resources, or we love you so much and we're going to perpetually infantilize you. But no, let's raise up the next generation of mixed leaders, which is the next generation of humans, right? Multi-ethnicity on the rise. What does it look like to make sure that mixed folks have a platform, have the support systems to then teach monoethnic folks about the goodness of Christ? Oh man, I'm in my dream job.
I'm jelly.
We'll be hiring. I guess you would be IV Canada, but that's okay. I have some good friends who are IV Canada. And you and I can talk more later. I love it. I feel so blessed and in a good way spoiled and confirmed and affirmed that I'm on the path that God has for me. That I'm not getting distracted from the gospel, right? Which is what's leveraged at and weaponized to people of color, or people of color generally, but then specifically can be done against what multi-ethnic folks. No, I'm on the path. I'm on the path of following Jesus, of preaching the fullness of his gospel. And I'm struggling with workaholism for the first time in like a decade because I love my job. I've loved being on campus, but I was working primarily with law students for the last 10 years, and that's its own ministry. So now the fullness of, okay, and again, I have to have boundaries so that I can be a part of my church community, so that I can be available to my family that lives in this house. Because I'm just loving this job. And so, okay, one of the ways in which I'm being empowered and equipped and encouraged is to have healthy boundaries, to not be a workaholic, right? To trust God that he's doing the work and that he doesn't need me, but he wants me to join him in that.
You've been invited to participate in this unfolding
Yes.
hope. I loved the piece around gospel because, and I may be biased, when we talk about the wholeness of the gospel story, it is rooted in the incarnate Christ, who himself is a multi-ethnic being. And as society, as we use North America, in our cultural context, is shifting in its demographics, I think it's multi-ethnic people who are at the helm to be able to bridge gaps and be the storytellers unto what is to come, because we have the cultural competency to do those things that others can't. I think that's the piece. You use the word multi-ethnic people have prophetic eyes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I love that. You should put that on a sweater. The
Yes.
prophetic eyes to see things that others can't because we've experienced it inside of our own DNA of how to contextualize and how to communicate and share and embody and
Mm-hmm.
live
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. What do you think? Did did you say superpower at one point?
Yeah, so that got coined when I got to chat with Esau McCauley on the disruptors, and that was kind of where that came out of it, is that it's our
The
superpower.
superpower, yeah, we have a superpower, and so yeah, I think that we stand at the forefront of this work as the church shifts. I don't know how much. It's exciting that you're starting something new. Me being a church planner for all of my career, but or the ministry side at least, that you're starting something new because I don't know if the church has the capacity to change these things from within, and if they do, it will be very
Mm.
slow. But
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
start new things that will lead onto new things, that's so exciting to me. May you be
Yeah.
affirmed in this work that you're doing
Oh,
and
thank
the
you.
boundaries that you put up because you want to do it all because it's so incredible. What do you think? I want to ask this question, one more after that, and then we'll trail off into the sunset.
Okay.
What do you think multi-ethnic specifically, and I touched on it a little bit, we both touched on it. What do we bring to the church today?
I think what's interesting about multi-ethnicity being our superpower, it is not one that is necessarily flashy or necessarily builds us up to be puffed up in of ourselves. I think there's a little bit of a built-in humility.
Mm. Mm.
That our superpower is recognizing our finitude. Our superpower is recognizing the ways in which we do and don't fit in. Our superpower is knowing that we need Jesus desperately to make sense of ourselves. When we think about North American church culture and evangelical church culture, which I'm still part of a quote unquote
Yeah,
evangelical denomination, quote
totally.
unquote evangelical church.
And job.
And job, absolutely. As prophetic as InterVarsity might be, we're still thoroughly evangelical and quite orthodox. I love that there can be a pushback to celebrity pastor, celebrity leader culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I can be very charismatic and I can get up and preach and teach and speak. And I have all these things to say, and I've done the work, and I have the receipts, and I've done the research, and I have this book and this podcast and this position. But at the end of the day, if what I'm saying is multi-ethnic people are amazing because of our multi-ethnic Christ, it's a little bit easier to not get caught up in myself, which I think is kind of ironic, right? Because our superpower is that we are multi-ethnic. Our superpower is a very embodied and spiritual existence. But because we're basing it on who Jesus actually was and is, he has to be brought back into the picture if we're telling the story well. And so I'm grateful because I am gregarious and I do love the spotlight and I do love performing. I'm the weirdest type of people pleaser there is because I want people to be pleased with me as I am. So there's not, even in this inherent framework of code switching and shifting according to different circumstances, there's very much a sense of, oh no, I'm not going to change how I feel. I'm going to logic and emote you into realizing how great I am. Which is just, yeah, which is,
how's that
going? It smacks of colonialism at its worst, I recognize.
There you go.
But I think it's also, it can be a very winsome presentation of the gospel. Look how good God has made me. Look how much God has poured his image into me and thereby you in terms of a nuanced story, in terms of not settling for easy answers, in terms of living in liminal spaces, in terms of my talents and my passions and my perspective. Again, I can get stuck in the look at me part, but I think God is gracious to move me along to the look how great I am because of how God has made me. And I think that is definitely a prophetic word for the church, because again, it's that unhealthy binary that I think is what plagues us with our celebrity culture, our celebrity pastor, our celebrity leader culture, of either someone downplays themselves and either it's false humility or they never get heard, or they accept the adulation that comes with the title and they set themselves up for failure with a lack of humility, and they surround themselves with quote unquote yes men who don't keep them humble and grounded. That middle ground of absolutely, I have this voice and I'm going to use it. Absolutely, I have the educational privilege and have had the socioeconomic privilege to do this work, to study these things, to do the research, to write the book. And that's because of God. Yeah, that's a superpower that'll last, right? That's to whom much has been given, much will be expected. That's, to me, and this is where I'll wax nerdy, to me, that is the difference between the origin story of Iron Man, who is a self-made man, who created his superpower, who revels in saying, I am Iron Man. And I have thoughts about Iron Man and, his playboy ways anyway. And Captain America, who was chosen because white Captain America, the original Cap in the Marvel timeline, who was chosen because he willingly fell on a grenade, thinking it was real, to protect other people. That's a very different style of leadership. That's a very different way of being a superhero. And if I can really geek out, when you look at the story in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I'm obsessed with, and I get real cranky with people who are like, it's not a part of the MCU. Yeah, shut up. It is. Stan Lee had a cameo. All of that passion is because I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because it is such a diverse cast. And the origin story of superheroes in that, like Quake, who is mixed. The actor who plays Quake, Chloe Bennett, is white American and Chinese American. The character she plays is mixed, and it's made very clear in her parentage. She comes into her powers in a very frightening way, and she really wrestles with them. And when she comes to accept who she is as this powered, inhuman person, superhero, it is from a place of looking at what does it mean to be this and this? What does it mean to be this person who can save lives but can also take them without meaning to? Or if she loses her temper, right? And then the other Asian character, primary character, lead character on the show is played by Ming-Na Wen, who is amazing. And she is not superpowered, but she's a superhero. She's amazing. She's a fighter, but she's also passionate. And she comes into her own of learning, what does it mean to be stoic, but not harsh? What does it mean to admit my softer parts? And again, I already mentioned Shang-Chi. It bums me out, people saying, oh, he's the first Asian superhero in the MCU. Because he's not. Because these two women with varying Asian ethnicities, one of whom is mixed, they've already done some of this work, and that comes in brazenly and says, I am all of these things and I am all there is to need or know. But I want to be the kind that comes in and says, I've been gifted by God with these super heroic habits and attributes, and it's hard. and it's not easy. And I stand on the shoulders of giants. I stand firmly on my community and my ancestry and those that have walked before. That's the type of superhero I want to be.
I think that one of our superpowers is we're able to, whether we do so imperfect, we'll always do so imperfectly rather, is to know the struggle of belonging and to be able to spot and identify gaps in belonging in community so we can see those who don't fit. Because in almost every aspect, at least along an ethnic or ethnicity or racialized line, we know what it means to not belong and to then create space of belonging.
Yes.
Which isn't easy, especially when you're creating new things. Hey, the last question I have, or exploration, is just the one piece in your book where it was just, we've already touched on it a couple of times already, but it was like, why didn't I can't believe this is not what I missed this. It is so evident, yet it's also, and I'm still sitting, and I have to sit with it, is the notion of Jesus as multi-ethnic Jesus. And I'm just like, maybe partially we're not culturally alert to different ethnicities from the ancient Near East.
Right.
But that means a lot. And it draws Jesus into the multi-ethnic experience, draws us nearer to Christ in ways that still need to be fully explored. And of course, each of us, which is the beauty of incarnation, that Christ would encounter us in our multi-ethnicity, we need to just sit in that.
Yeah.
Was there an aha moment for you as you made that connection?
Yes, definitely. As I said, when I read Sunday's book, I recently had what started out as a little bit of a panicky aha moment, which then I think became a word to monoethnic white folks. So I was thinking about, wait a minute, Jesus' ethnicity is his multi-ethnicity, his heritage of these diverse women is pretty far back in his lineage. And I had a little bit of a panicked moment of, oh no, am I wrong? This is after the book had come out, right? This is in the last couple of months.
Okay.
Oh no, am I completely wrong? Like, what? That's what I've been saying white folk don't get to do, right? They don't get to say, oh, I've got an Irish ancestor or a German ancestor. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They don't get to do that. And I seriously had a little bit of a crisis of not faith, but
No, I had that
mental crisis.
Too, when I was like, wait a minute, like how far back? Yeah.
How far back? Well, here's the deal. I think what matters about it is it informs how Jesus did his ministry and lived his life as a Jewish man. So it wasn't a footnote. The Spirit of God, who is Jesus, the Spirit of Christ as given to the disciples and then to all believers, specifically had Matthew include that lineage in his gospel. So it's not a footnote, right? It's not something that was written in the margins, and we can have discussions of inspiration and original text and all that. But unlike some other passages which are still debated, nobody is debating the veracity of Matthew 1. It is 100% verifiable. And not every ancestor of Christ that is even mentioned elsewhere in the Bible, in Numbers, in Leviticus, in all of those sections of the Pentateuch, is mentioned in the Matthew 1 lineage. So the Holy Spirit was very specific and careful to inspire Matthew to write those women into the lineage. So one, that means something in terms of what we are being told about Jesus and who Jesus is. And when you look at Jesus' interactions with the Syrophoenician woman, when you look at his interactions with Samaritans in general, he is formed by the lineage of these matriarch these matriarchs who came into the Jewish people and reminded us that, and this is credit to my dear friend Steve Tamayo, who is mixed Latino white, the Jewish lineage was not intended to be quote unquote pure all along. To be Jewish was always meant to be welcoming in the nations. Okay, so that made me feel better, just in, as an author and as a speaker and a theologian. Like, okay, okay, all right, I didn't miss something important. I did miss something important, but that does not upend.
Yeah.
It adds, exactly. It doesn't upend. And I think that then becomes a message for monoethnic folks who are majority culture, who are white, that this is how you do it. This is how you dig into your heritage in a way that echoes Jesus. I was so honored because another dear friend, and again, these are all folks that I've encountered in church or through university, Bob Truby, he reviewed the book, and he is a white man. And he made a good point in his review of saying, this is not just a book for mixed folks. I ask mixed people all the time who are so gracious and who say things like what you've said and what I said about Sunday's book. I felt so seen. Thank you so much. This blessed me. I ask them to give a copy to their pastor, to their boss, to their family, who are monoethnic, either majority culture or minority culture. Because I think when monoethnic people look at the example of Jesus, they can find a way to look at the facets of their ethnicity that is not appropriative, that is not, in a sense, colorblind. We're all mixed, but is in the, how can my ancestors shape the way I engage those who are different from me today? Because that's what we do as mixed people, right? Again, that's our normal. And I definitely get on a soapbox that as we think of all the normativity, white normativity, the patriarchy, in a lot of ways, even in Orthodox side B spaces, heteronormativity, as we engage all of those questions, we as mixed folks, that's part of our superpower, are very good at pushing back on those norms and saying, actually, here's another perspective, here's another side. I think the church in general, and certainly the white church in North America, is haunted by the specter of mono-ethnic normativity. It is a multi-ethnic world. Yeah. It's incomplete. And I want to even reverse the script and not be like, okay, well, the norm is monoethnicity, but here's another story that's multi-ethnic. No, the norm is multi-ethnicity. Monoethnicity is actually the outlier. Right? And I think Jesus and his lineage shows all of us a way to do that well. To say, okay, Jesus didn't identify as Canaanite, but he identified with Canaanites because of Rahab, his Canaanite ancestor. He didn't identify as Moabite, but he identified with Moabites because of Ruth and how she came from Moab and met the Christ, or met, well, yes, the pre-incarnate Christ. She met God as he was presented to her in the faithfulness of the Jewish Naomi, her mother-in-law. And that called her into the Jewish family, but she didn't lose her Moabiteness. And Jesus never really did either. It just became a part of the Jewish story. And because of that, he could identify as Jewish in a way that honored his Moabite heritage, in a way that shaped the way he engaged and encountered those who were different from him, whether that was women or non-Jews, quote unquote, or even the rich because he was poor, right? That was shaped by it. And I think that is a message for all of us, that we need to find the ways in which we occupy minority spaces or have a lineage of minorities to allow us to engage and encounter minorities in a humble way, in a way that longs, not even tolerates being taught, but longs to be taught. Because in the same way that Jesus was Jewish, and Jewish was always meant to be of the nations, a set apart people for God who welcomed the nations in, what it can mean to be human, what it can mean to be multi-ethnic, what it can mean even to be white in some ways, is to take that privilege and to welcome the nations in. And to say, because of my ancestry, I will be reminded that there are those who have not been treated well and are continuing to not be treated well. And I will let that shape the way I preach the gospel. Because the gospel is for the nations. The leaves of the tree, I love in Revelation 21, the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. That's our call.